housing. Affordable housing, part 3, no place like home, why affordable housing is falling short and what our community can do about it. As most of you know, the League believes that every family deserves a decent home and suitable living environment. And we also believe that government has a responsibility to help make that happen and to work with all of us to make that happen. We have 2 speakers today who will be talking to us about some of the aspects. I'm not going to introduce them at this point. I would like to do a couple of housekeeping things. If you're on Zoom, please keep yourself on mute. And if you're in the room, please make sure that your phone is silenced. If you have questions, we have index cards in the room, and you can put your questions in the chat. We will be monitoring that. For those of you who are not familiar with this facility, the bathrooms, you go out this door and turn left, and you'll see both the men's and women's bathrooms. We do have some snacks on the tables, and there's coffee and water available in the lobby, for those of you who haven't already done that. We will try to stay on time, and that means we will adjourn at 11, and we will be following our program as closely as we can. A little bit about the League, for those of you who are not familiar. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and, when necessary, litigation at the local, state, and national levels. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate, and we are fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. The League promotes political responsibility through education to increase understanding of public policy issues and to engage citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. We hold educational events such as today, and on the back of your agenda, I hope all of you have gotten that. If not, there's some more on the table. We do have information on our April 4th event, which is on overdevelopment in Southwest Florida, sacrificing wildlife and erasing agriculture, and our May 2nd event, preparing for the 2026 election, partnering and networking for voter engagement. The League also provides nonpartisan election resources. We publish an online Vote 411 voter guide, and we hold forums on issues and candidates prior to elections. We always are promoting voter registration, vote by mail, and voter engagement. In addition, the League acts on select government issues and advocates on public policy positions that are developed through study and member agreement. In Lee County, at this time, we focus on affordable housing, economic and social justice, quality public education, health care for all, including reproductive, behavioral, and gun violence prevention. And we support resiliency and sustainability, protection of the environment, and addressing climate change. This year, we are saying no to mid-cycle redistricting, and the League is supporting single-member districts for the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. All of you will have an opportunity to vote on that in the November election. There will be a referendum. I'd like to just mention two laws that are being proposed right now that the League is against. The League is for protection of voting rights, and so we are saying no to bills that will make it harder to vote and to register to vote. In Florida, this is House Bill 991 and Senate Bill 1334. And I just checked this morning, according to the State Senate website, the Senate will be looking at Senate Bill 1334 next Wednesday. So now is a good opportunity for you to contact your state senators and give them your position on that. I'm sorry? And In the United States Senate, they will be looking at the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, also called the SAVE Act. Both of these laws would require documentation to prove that American citizens, prove American citizenship to register to vote. And these will be very burdensome, especially for married women who might have changed their names, many who don't have easy access to necessary documents, and citizens such as birth certificates, passports, naturalization certificates, or other things that would make it difficult for people to present those without a lot of time and effort at the polls. So those are some things to think about generally about the league. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our two moderators for today, Jacqueline McMiller and Jessica Turner, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out and sharing your time today with the League of Women Voters. I would love to introduce to you Jessica Turner, and I want everyone to be able to see her. She's on our Lee County, the League of Women Voters Housing Committee. My name is Jacqueline McMiller. I am the Vice President of the League of Women Voters as well. Just real quickly, as far as the questions on your cards, if you would like to pose a question to one of the speakers today, please put their name at the top left-hand corner. So when we collect the cards, we'll know specifically who you would like to pose the questions to. We will be, at the very end, we will address the questions and to make sure that everything flows and everyone has an opportunity to ask questions as well as the speakers to be able to speak. We definitely want to hear what you have to say and ensure that we answer any questions that you may have. I would like to introduce to you Lowell Atkinson. Lowell Atkinson is a policy analyst for the Florida Housing Coalition and serves on the Florida Housing Coalition's Affordable Housing Development Team, where he helps manage the pre-development loan program. In this role, he collects nonprofit affordable housing developers, connects nonprofit affordable housing developers with pre-development capital, and provides training and technical assistance to strengthen their development capacity. Previously, Lowell worked with Pinellas County and the City of St. Petersburg Housing and Community Development Departments, as well as Raymond James Affordable Housing Investments. A housing credit certified professional, he has managed the distribution of more than $85 million in tax credit equity across 51 projects, resulting in the creation or preservation of approximately 3,800 affordable rental units, including more than 41 million supporting projects led by tribal designating housing entities. Lowell brings deep experience in public and private housing finance, regulatory compliance, and developer support, and he holds a master's degree in public administration and environmental studies from the College of Charleston. It is with the greatest admiration and pleasure that I introduce to you Mr. Lowell Atkinson.
Wow, thank you so much for that generous introduction, everyone. Just one point of clarification. I'm now a policy analyst. So last year I worked with the PLP program with the coalition. So just one point of clarification, but I still do work with nonprofit housing developers as we all do. So I'm so glad to be with you guys, albeit virtually. Wish I could be there in person. It looks like a great group. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then everyone tell me if you can see it, and I will get this started. Okay. Let's see, just one second. Everyone can see it? Okay, great. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me today, the League of Women Voters of Lee County. Just a little bit about the coalition for those of you that are not familiar. We're a statewide nonprofit organization, basically a trade association for affordable housing. The industry, we provide training and technical assistance for all things really affordable housing, and listed are some of the things that we can do, looking at compliance with local, state, federal regs and policy, helping craft and advise on affordable housing program design, capacity building for nonprofit housing providers. So there's a relatively new program called the Nonprofit Capacity Building Institute that my colleague Charles Knighton runs. It's really amazing. It's a comprehensive training program for burgeoning nonprofit housing developers. It really walks them through step by step the development process. So highly recommend that if you know anyone interested. We also help with land use planning and analysis, and also research and data gathering. So again, we provide training and technical assistance through the Catalyst program, benevolence of Florida Housing and Finance Corporation, but we also provide these services on a contract basis. Okay, I wanted to plug just for a second the Housing Action Lab, which is relatively recent. We started it last year in the policy team as a way to really approach direct advocacy, actionable policy research, and then building capacity at the state and local level through coalition building to empower communities, to drive their own housing policy. So I included a link here, which you should be able to access when you get the PowerPoint, to our Substack. It has a lot of good policy updates, policy pieces that we write on a variety of different topics. And then also the new policy toolkit, which I'm going to reference some today, and I think has already been provided, is available at that link as well. So I just want to start off, I'm sure everyone in this room, because you're interested in affordable housing, knows what it is, but just to kind of to lay the basic definition of what we consider is housing where the occupant doesn't pay any more than 30% of their gross income on housing. And I consider that including utilities. Important distinction. And so when you see an individual or household spending more than 30% on housing, we consider them, quote, cost burden, right? And so this table, I hope it's big enough for everyone to see in the room, but it's basically a table that shows Florida Housing Finance Corporation's income limits for 2025 by household size. I included the 80% AMI for Lee County, what that income would be, and then 30% of that income. And just as an example of some of the challenges in Lee County, I pulled the median rent for Lee County, which is $2,200 a month as of last year. And the big takeaway here is that no 80% AMI or low to moderate income household could afford the median rent in Lee County. So to kind of dovetail on that, this is a breakdown of the cost burden from Schimberg Center for Housing Studies for Lee County. Just shows that anyone making over 30% AMI or 40%, and more than 50% AMI, how many people are cost burdened throughout the county and based on the household income. And so you can see that over 83,000 low-income residents in Lee County are cost burdened and spend more than 30% on housing. So, and then to kind of just touch on, I think a very important factor is affordable housing rental deficit. The Schimberg also does a great job of really extracting this. And it just shows that for the MSA that you guys are in, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, which is encompassed by Lee County, where you see the negative is where there's a deficit at that income level. So if you go all the way to 0 to 80% AMI, the total rental housing deficit is almost 12,000. So it's saying like we really need 12,000 more units to even catch up to the demand for folks at that income level. And as a comparison, you can see the 120 right next to it. There's a surplus of 3,000 units. So really the main point here is that 80% AMI and below needs the most subsidy, the most investment. And right now, Lee County, doesn't have enough affordable rental units for those folks. So this is not exhaustive of the reasons why housing is unaffordable, and I'm sure there's many that you're thinking of right now that isn't on this list. But just in general, imbalance of supply and demand can create unaffordability when there's more demand for affordable housing that is being supplied, obviously, in the private market or through public subsidies. Housing prices increase faster than wages. I'll show a slide to demonstrate that. Sometimes population growth can be a factor there as well. Just the fact that if so many people move into an area, generally a lot of those folks have more social mobility, more discretionary income to spend more on housing, and then that over time can drive up the price of housing and take more affordable units off the market for those folks at the 80% AMI or below. We all know the effects of COVID, how horrible that was. From that, inflation increased, the building supplies went up, insurance has skyrocketed, and it still really hasn't stabilized. So it's really saying that the construction costs, have gone up, which makes the housing obviously, more expensive. And then, to a lesser degree, sometimes government policy and interventions doesn't keep up with the need, the demand, and I guess in this case, the crisis. So just some of the reasons there, the causes for unaffordability. And just wanted to highlight here, this is a graph that shows population increase for the area. It's got, some counties in the Southwest Florida bundled in there. But if you see Lee County at the top, since 2015, it looks like a little over 100,000 folks have moved to Lee County, which is the most of the surrounding counties. And that's an enormous amount of growth. And like I said, you're going to have impacts from that with supply and demand. So it's just an example of how the population growth can influence housing affordability. But to point out, one really important thing on supply is that in 2024, Lee County, I don't know if you all can see every table here, but Lee County leads Florida in new construction. So in new single family homes built and mobile homes added, you guys were number one from a county standpoint. And then close behind on condominiums, number 5 with condominiums built, and multifamily units at number 7. So because right now, Lee County, getting back to the population growth, is now considered a large county. Lee and Polk jumped up to large county status with Florida Housing Finance Corporation due to that growth. And so you're seeing that reflected in the new construction. And then I guess, to touch on the pricing of the homes built, this is an example of how the median home price is still not really accessible for low-income households in Lee County. This table to the left lists every county based on their median single-family home price from the first quarter of 2025. And you can see Lee County highlighted in yellow is above half, the top 40% there. Then I just extracted an example from Redfin from January of 26, where the median sales price of the home is just under $400,000. And so if you do some quick math on that, if someone's trying to buy that home and let's say they put 5% down, that's $378. They would have to pay between $2,200 and $2,800 a month, assuming like a 30-year fix with 6 to 7% interest. And then pulling back in that table from Florida Housing on the gross income, you can see that no one in that range could really afford that monthly payment. I highlighted the 5-person household because technically they would qualify, but then that's not including utilities. And remember, utilities is typically included in that cost burden definition for housing affordability. So to touch on wages a little bit, as I was saying, how wages, can lag behind housing prices. I think this is an example. Everything in the jungle green or light green shows the most common occupations in the last few years for Cape Coral, Fort Myers, metropolitan statistical area. And then in gold, you can see that's the hourly wage needed to afford a median single family home, which is $45.20. The hourly wage for a 2-bedroom fair market rent is $32. So only 2 of those occupations can even afford to rent a 2-bedroom unit at fair market rent. And none of them can afford a single family home at the median price. So just kind of getting to the struggle that folks in the region have based on their income with affordability. So that was a lot about how bad things are, but I wanted to kind of, and it's not, Lee County's doing well. Some home prices are starting to fall, but I just mean affordability is still a huge problem everywhere in Florida, and Lee County is not exempt from that. But there are some solutions, for this, and so I'm just going to go through a little bit again through the framework of our local policy toolkit, and I know it was provided beforehand, but there's a link there through the PowerPoint where you can access the full document. And it's basically like a five-part framework where we like to suggest local governments implement affordable housing solutions or incentives around funding, land use and zoning, and public and private land. I'm only going to focus on those first three because you guys are already doing the community part, and strategic partnerships is something that comes out of really, the other three as you're working towards implementing those policies. So here are the five strategies that we recommend centered around funding and using every available dollar to meet local housing needs. I'm going to double click a little more on the housing trust in a minute, but just to kind of walk through 2 to 5, what we mean. Number 2 is really making sure that if you are a developer and you're looking for public funding opportunities, to make sure that you don't miss, home, CDBG, USDA funding opportunities at the local level, local bonds. Every county has their own housing finance authority, which have the authority to issue private activity bonds that can be used for housing. And they're typically bundled with 4% tax credits, things like that. And CRAs, I know there are community redevelopment agencies. I think there are 4 in Fort Myers. Those are geographic areas where there's targeted investment and more public funding can be available. So that's kind of what we mean for number 2. Number 3 is really, again, focusing on the 80% AMI or less demographic where subsidies are needed most. And we also, in that one, want to stress permanent affordability where it can be implemented when using public dollars. So this is kind of suggesting Lee County can make those conditions for permanent affordability, through a 99-year ground lease, or making sure there's a shared equity model for home ownership units. They can make those conditions in exchange for access to their funding. 4 is really about reducing construction costs for developers of affordable housing. And those are 2 examples there, fee waivers and property tax relief, which most municipalities and counties have in some form. And then 5, we're really talking about accessing money from banks, philanthropy, anchor institutions, the eds and meds, which can take more time but are pretty great sources of consistent funding when they're tapped, and then major employers. So, think about mission-driven CDFIs, the community development financial institutions, of which there are many throughout the state, and then other foundations that can help, as an example, catalyze a revolving loan fund to support affordable housing development. So these, again, are more fleshed out in the toolkit, and I would be here for 2 hours if I went through everything that's in the toolkit, but really you can dig into these more when you look in the toolkit, and it has more examples and more guidance. But again, wanted to drill down on the housing trust funds. So this is one we really focus on and advocate for as a priority for funding, because a recurring dedicated local funding stream is critical for affordable housing, and it can be one of the most effective ways because it's locally controlled, locally funded, locally implemented. And there in the middle are just some examples of how housing trust funds can be used. They can, and they're examples of where they directly subsidize a construction project. They use the trust fund dollars to provide funding for the development, gap financing, down payment assistance, for home ownership, rental, and then property acquisition. You can, and a lot of trust funds do, they will sell land put that money right back in the trust fund, buy land, sell land, buy land, sell land, like put it right back in and develop that land, or sell it to a nonprofit that will develop an affordable housing project. So those are some examples, and here's sort of a list of the kinds of funding sources that can finance a housing trust fund. If you can't see those, it's general revenue, like I just mentioned, public land sales, builder contributions, TIF revenue, tax increment financing, the local bonds. There are some good examples of linkage fees. I'll talk a little bit more about some of these. And then to the right are the examples in Florida, just some of them. And I highlighted Fort Myers because they are a great example of a housing trust fund. They've had their housing trust fund, I think, 4 years, and it's doing great work. So I just wanted to highlight that. So to dig down into a little bit of the trust funds for Fort Myers as an example, here you see on the table the two different trust funds established in 2022, the myriad funding sources. It's really impressive how they fund the one, or both of them, but the one up top, there's 6 different sources. They have a small linkage fee, sale of city-owned property, where 3% of that goes back in to the trust fund, so it's revolving. They divert some ad valorem tax revenue and TIF rebate program, and then even an inclusionary housing fee. And so then they're using that for a variety of valuable affordable housing strategies in the community. And it just has listed there the funding that's appropriated, which is pretty impressive. And so the takeaway here is that Lee County, could establish their own housing trust fund to do similar housing investments and have a countywide impact. Another example of the affordable housing funding options in Lee County are the CRAs that I just mentioned. So the state allows local governments to establish these CRAs with the intent to target property tax revenue and shave off a little bit of that and reinvest it in the community in a variety of ways. And so far, that's been locally controlled and has not been preempted by the state. And there are 4 CRAs in Fort Myers that are listed there, and I just wanted to include a few examples of recent investments that we're seeing come to fruition. The White Coral Project, which was announced in 2024, with Habitat of Lee and Hendry counties, is projecting 26 single-family homes to serve those between 30% and 80% AMI. And the Towels Garden Project, which was, I think, announced late last year, $5.6 million has been committed from the CRA to develop 141 rental units serving those at or below 120% AMI. The important thing there, which I highlight, is this one is contingent on almost $20 million from the CDBG-DR from Lee County disaster recovery from the hurricane. I understand Lee County received a really large allocation, and they're doing a great job of setting up some investments there for affordable housing, and this is one of them. So, and just another takeaway is Lee County could, look into and establish their own CRAs for unincorporated areas to make similar investments. A few examples of funding options outside of Lee County that could be replicated are bonds for affordable housing, and I don't mean the HFA bonds, but these are voter approved bond programs, such as the one in Palm Beach County, where in 2022 they approved the $200 million bond just to support affordable housing. I've actually worked with a few developers that are accessing that funding. So that's just something to consider. I mean, that obviously took a lot of time, energy, and money, but it can definitely be a game changer because it can offset the need for like LIHTC tax credits and other deeper subsidies, because you have a massive amount of local funding there to tap into. And the other one is the infrastructure surtax. The state also allows local governments through voter approval to levy a surtax of 0.5 cent or 1 cent that can then be used for land acquisition for affordable housing. It's like a separate trust fund that can be tapped. And the 4 examples there are the only 4 that I believe are in effect right now, in Pinellas, Collier, Palm Beach, and Alachua. And I just wanted to highlight 2 projects there below the Ecos Creek side, which is just south of you guys in Collier. That one, they just broke ground, I believe, and it's going to have 160 units of affordable housing that's serving 30 to 80% AMI. And the Shores is 51 units in Pinellas County as well. This second one is really about land use and zoning. I'm not going to focus on this as much, but and I'll touch on number 1 a little bit more. But unlocking density, this is really about, this is kind of like the wonky planner terminology, so I won't get too deep into it, but building heights and setbacks and things like that. Making housing more affordable for first-time home buyers or smaller houses on smaller lots. That's the starter home. And number 4 is really, focusing housing where infrastructure exists and there's lower risk of flooding. 5, an example of that is affordable or workforce housing density bonuses that allow, developers to add their density and get more net operating income and revenue if they make those extra units affordable. Number 6 is pretty self-explanatory, the expedited permitting process, which can be the number 1 obstacle for developers because time is money. And 7 is really think about motels, strip malls, offices, former industrial buildings, and kind of what we call adaptive reuse of those buildings for affordable housing. This is an example of strategy number 1, more homes of more shapes and sizes in more places. So I don't know if you can see all of those, but the top row is really meant to focus on mid-density development in areas traditionally zoned for single-family homes. So from ADUs all the way to cottage court clusters. And the bottom one are larger developments that may fit in some places Lee County and they may not, but just wanted to highlight St. Pete and Gainesville, which have great examples of recently enacted ADU policies that they expand ADUs in single family areas. And you can access those links for, it goes directly to their ADU site where you can learn more about the accessory dwelling units and their programs. So last, just to touch on the third one is land. So private and public land, putting land to work for affordable housing. It's pretty intuitive, but 2 is really about making sure that when you select your site selection for the land, you do your due diligence. You make sure that it's safe, that it's in a resilient location, not in a flood zone, etc. 3 is speaking somewhat to land banking. Public or private entities can do that and then plan on building affordable housing over time. Some local governments have a great program where they'll land bank and then they'll donate, property to a nonprofit. They might get the property through tax achievements or etc. And then they have a disposition program. And 4 is about CLTs, which we're really growing sub-industry in affordable housing with shared equity models for rental and home ownership. And so we actually have our own CLT Institute run by, my colleague Matthew. So if anyone's interested in that, has a nonprofit that might be interested, please let me know. Excuse me. So to kind of wrap up on the public land, just wanted to list these entities listed have the statutory authority to buy and sell land. And so, every entity listed on here has access to land, and just they are required actually to have a public land listing as of the Live Local Act of 2023. So, just be aware that that's another resource to tap into. They list the public land and whether it can be used for affordable housing or another purpose. And just wanted to plug some of the public entities that are doing a great job putting public land to work for affordable housing. This is, again, not exhaustive, but these are some of the more robust programs. And I highlighted there Fort Myers and the Fort Myers CRA because they are doing a great job with acquiring and disposing of public land for affordable housing. But also, just to highlight, Lee County does have a public land listing. based on what I saw, is 53 vacant lots. And it looks like they're using 2 of about 5 strategies that we recommend for that: donation to nonprofit developers and sale with proceeds benefiting affordable housing. So it's an underutilized opportunity, but just so everyone knows, that resource is out there. Last, just wanted to mention YIGBY, if everyone is familiar with this or not, but it's a law that was passed last year, SB 1730. It allows local governments to basically allow residential development on parcels owned by religious institutions, as long as 10% of those units are reserved for 120% AMI or less. And it can be on the parcel has a house of worship or contiguous to a parcel with a house of worship. And so we are really excited about this opportunity because it could potentially unlock over 30,000 parcels for affordable housing. So sorry, I know I went a little bit over my time, but thank you guys so much. And if you have any questions, email me, or I'm here today.
Thank you, Lowell. That was fantastic. Please stick around. We will have questions for you a little bit later.
Absolutely.
I hope that you could hear everybody clapping for you in here. That was great. I would love to sit through the 2-hour version of that, so maybe we can do that some other time. I have the privilege right now to introduce my colleague and friend, Lois Healy. So I've got a little something written. Bear with me for a moment. Affordable housing is not just a policy issue for millions of families. It's deeply personal. Our next panelist understands that better than most because she has lived it. Lois Healy is the CEO of Affordable Homeownership Foundation, and she brings into this work something that no certification can teach. She has empathy that is rooted in real life experience. As a single mother for most of her adult life, she knows firsthand what it means to navigate tight budgets and economic uncertainty. Those experiences are exactly what drive her passion for building affordable, accessible housing and coaching families towards financial stability. She has the credentials also to back that passion up. She spent nearly a decade in banking as a CRA loan officer before transitioning into counseling. She has an understanding of how affordable mortgages actually work. She holds certifications in home ownership counseling, foreclosure prevention, financial coaching, military housing, senior housing, and homelessness prevention. She has served on 12 nonprofit boards, including 2 housing agencies, and has over 10 years of counseling experience helping first-time home buyers and families facing foreclosure find a path forward. She is exactly the kind of voice that this conversation needs. Please welcome my friend, Lois Healy.
And no, Paul's going to do it. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm Lois Healy with Affordable Homeownership Foundation. And Lowell went through most of my presentation with what he was talking about, but we can definitely move from here. What is affordable housing? Are we bringing the presentation up? So what is affordable housing? Everybody has a different idea of what affordable housing really is. And so Lowell went through the part about the 30% of your income being spent on affordable housing. What we see as a housing counseling agency, and I'm going off book, what we see as an affordable housing agency is most of our seniors, people with disabilities, youth that have aged out of foster care, and veterans are becoming homeless because they cannot afford to pay rent. So we looked at all the different solutions: tiny houses, smaller footprint homes, duplexes, anything to keep people off the streets. And what we came up with was the SRO model, which is the quadplex that Lowell was talking about. We started building those in 2016, and the Board of County Commissioners used that as an example of a way to combat homelessness in Lee County. So we have about 8 of those properties up and running. We have 3 more that are online to be built. So those properties are helping our seniors, our veterans, and our people with disabilities have a place to live. So we build these places, and the average rent is no more than 30% of their income, and that includes all of their utilities. So the average person is paying about $340 a month. That includes all their utilities. We tried to get tiny homes or smaller footprint homes built in Lee County, and it wasn't allowed. So we decided on this model to try to get people housed right away because we are seeing more and more issues. We have, okay, we got the first page up. Okay, we can go past the first page. Okay, affordable housing definition and key concepts. Housing price for households earning below the median income, ensuring stable, safe, and affordable living options. The 30% rule Lowell went over. Total housing costs, rent, mortgage, and utilities should not exceed 30% of household income to cover the other essentials. What we're seeing on a daily basis at our organization, we went from seeing 10% homeless back in 2019 to 90% homeless clients in 2026. So since the pandemic, that has increased fourfold. So the people that are coming to us are 60s, 70s, and 80s becoming homeless. We just housed two 80-year-olds, an 88-year-old and an 87-year-old just recently.
Cole,
I'm
after
sorry.
you spray them, be sure you pull them out of the sun or it'll just bake them.
Okay. Affordability crisis criteria and income ratios. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't part of the program. Affordability is often quantified through income ratios, particularly the percentage of household income devoted to housing cost. HUD commonly uses the 30% rule, while some countries adjust the threshold based on regional income disparities and cost of living. So most of Lee County falls within the 50 to 80% of AMI, with a huge number of 30% of AMI, which is upsetting because most of our seniors are in that 30%. I am on. So you ask why more people don't? Yeah. No, we're past that one. So you ask why don't more people buy homes if they need affordable housing? Lowell went through that. The cost of housing, the average price of a house in Lee County right now starts at $280 and goes up to $350. The average person makes between $45,000 and $65,000. You can do the math; they don't qualify, especially with interest rates starting at 6% and up. So what we're seeing now in Lee County is foreclosures of clients that got their mortgages in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. They thought they could all refinance within a couple of years and that the interest rates would go down. All those people bought houses that cost $530,000 to $700,000, and they just can't afford to live in those houses anymore, so they're all being foreclosed on. We had an increase in foreclosures in Lee County. We have one of our staff members is a realtor. We had 75 that were filed yesterday, and it keeps going up on a daily basis, so it's kind of scary. We do foreclosure prevention counseling, but in order for a bank, and it's hard for clients to understand this, in order for banks to be able to modify a mortgage, if your interest rate is below that 6% because they have to modify it at the current interest rate, they can't modify your loan. So a lot of these people are finding out they're going to have to do a short sale on their homes because they can't afford it anymore. We're going to be back where we were in 2009 and 2010, unfortunately. So I'm showing the income guidelines on these charts, but as you can see, this is the one taken from Lee County. Moderate income up to 50% of AMI for one person is $35,750. The actual amount that most of the people that I'm seeing are bringing in is like 45 to 55,000 for one person. So I have all these charts in here that describe annual income and interest rates and how much you can afford. So if you are a person making 45,000 a year and your interest rate is 6.5, you can afford a house that costs 131,800. I'm sorry, 148,300, but that does not include your taxes and insurance. So every time, especially now, what's causing the issues with our seniors is homeowners insurance. My homeowner insurance went from $1,500 to $5,700 just since 2020. So a lot of people can't absorb that amount of a higher rate of insurance. So a lot of them are losing their homes or having to put them up for sale. And if you have a reverse mortgages require that you maintain your taxes and insurance and the upkeep on your house. So a lot of our seniors got hit with hurricane damage 1, 2, 3 years in a row. So, of course, they haven't been able to keep up with the repairs. And unfortunately, our insurance companies, this is even more alarming, only covered 15% of the total population that filed claims during Hurricane Ian. So we were doing disaster case management. So what we were seeing is a lot of the nonprofits were helping to get these houses fixed. And a lot of the properties from Ian are still damaged. So the type of affordable housing developments Lowell went through already. So rather than bore you with that same information, the impact that this has on families and individuals, affordable housing gives them stability and stress reduction. We've found that people that have stable housing, their health and well-being is better. If they're more towards education and employment, stability reduces school absenteeism and boosts workplace productivity. Currently in Lee County, we have over 1,500 families that are homeless with their children. They're sleeping in their cars, they're sleeping wherever they can. So that's alarming. Family cohesion, reduced displacement risks, support routines, care, and togetherness. Benefits for communities and local economies. 2,500 jobs are created locally through affordable housing construction. It strengthens workforce stability and boosts local economic activity. Affordable housing reduces homelessness and poverty. So most of the people that we house in our units have all been homeless. So putting them in a place that's safe and affordable changes their lives. And you can't find that anywhere else. The 88-year-old that I housed said to me as soon as he saw his unit, "I thought I died and went to heaven," because he has never lived in a place that wasn't dilapidated, falling down, because he couldn't afford it. Most of the affordable housing units are not up to par with code, unfortunately. And some of these seniors are faced with living through that. The challenges in providing affordable housing, the rising land cost. Right now, currently, one of the things that Lowell was talking about, we get most of our land donated through the land trust, or I'm sorry, Lee County Lands. They have land that's been taken back by the county, and they make it affordable for nonprofits. They donate it to them, and that's what we build on. Another barrier is fluctuating interest rates, limited financing options. Right now, we're going through a big problem with grants. Most of our grants have been cut for affordable housing by our government, so we're having to try to find other ways to build affordable housing. Labor shortages, a lack of skilled construction workers, slow down project timelines, and supply chain disruptions. During the pandemic, it took us 2 years to build one house because we had shortages in lumber, shortages in cement, windows, you name it, we had a shortage. That's not going to stay up here. Policy and regulatory obstacles, development bottlenecks, zoning restrictions, lengthy permitting processes, and exclusionary land use policies frequently obstruct affordable housing development. We work with the Affordable Housing Committee, so we don't have that problem, but other developers do. Cost and feasibility impacts, minimum lot size, parking requirements, and limits on density increase cost and reduce project feasibility. Coordination and political barriers, inconsistent policy frameworks across jurisdictions, complicate coordination, reforms often face political resistance and community opposition rooted in NIMBYism. What it takes to overcome. Addressing these obstacles requires integrated policy approaches and sustained stakeholder engagement. We have a lot of pushback with people with NIMBYism. A lot of people don't want affordable housing in their backyard. They don't understand what affordable housing is. So that's some of the pushback that we get. They think affordable housing is slum and blight. Government programs and incentives, policy instruments, tax incentives, as Lowell mentioned, subsidies and low interest loans, and direct funding spur construction and preservation. Flagship programs and similar tools have been financed under millions of affordable units for decades. Implementation tools, inclusionary zoning, public land disposition, and streamlined approvals of support and delivery. And number 4, long-term commitment is vital until units are financed. Nonprofit and private sector initiatives, affordable housing and services, nonprofits build affordable units, deliver supportive services, and advocate for policy changes. Nonprofits and private developers combine resources and expertise to accelerate delivery. Innovative models, like the one we're using, community land trust and social impact, investing in unlocking long-term affordability. CSR and scaling impact, private sector CSR and new financing approaches expand collaboration and supply. So modular housing and prefabricated construction, reduces cost by 30%. The problem with that type of building, again, is NIMBYism. Certain neighborhoods don't allow modular housing or manufactured housing. Thank you. Cost of land has increased in areas making affordability an issue and vulnerability to tropical storms, hurricanes, and tornadoes. How many people had a tornado go through your yard? With Milton, we had a tornado come through our yard, and I was watching the news and it said, it's coming through South Fort Myers. I'm sitting in my house with 3 dogs and I had to go in the hallway with the dogs because I didn't know there was a tornado headed my way. So it's very scary for people to go through those things. There is a conclusion, essential need. Affordable housing is foundational to stabilities for individuals and families. Community impact, it strengthens local economies and improves health, education, and mobility. Persistent barriers, supply limits, and costs can deepen poverty and increase homelessness, as we've seen. Path forward, innovative strategies and collaboration can expand access for all. So, I winged it pretty good.
But don't go anywhere because I know that we're going to have questions. So I can see that Jacqueline is walking around right now. Yes, she'll be right back to you. If you have questions, please write them on index cards. If it is for a specific panelist, please make sure to write their name in the top left-hand corner. And we are going to get to some of your Q&A right now. I see Lowell is taking a drink of water, getting ready to answer all of your burning questions. So before we start with those questions, let's just give those panelists another round of applause for sharing their expertise with us. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks, Marcia. Here, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to go grab the other microphone.
And if I can add, if you have questions from the audience, please use the microphone. So wait till the microphone comes to you. We have people on Zoom that can't hear you unless you're speaking in the microphone. Okay, thanks.
On the cards. Yeah, so actually we're collecting these questions on the cards. So are you going to moderate?
If you don't mind, I'll get started at least with these two.
Right.
And then we'll get started. So the first question is for Lowell, but I know that Lois can answer this as well. And the question is about the 30% housing cost. Are insurance costs, should they be factored into when somebody is considered to be cost burdened or not? Let's let Lowell answer that because I've got another one for Lois right here.
Well, I would say, so that would be for homeowners, and so the PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, I typically consider that included in the total monthly payment. So I think, yes, insurance would be included in that 30% cutoff.
And boy, with the increase in insurance costs, that sure has made it difficult for a lot of us. I know. While we are sorting through the rest of the cards, really quick question for Lois. You mentioned that you have built 8 of these, your homes. Can you tell us where you have built them?
So we had belonged to the National Community Stabilization Trust before Lee County Lands was giving us property. So we have 4 in North Fort Myers and 4 in Lehigh right now. No, that's Affordable Homeownership Foundation. Yep.
So
I'm sorry?
the question.
You have call the office and we do an intake and put you on the list.
So
and I have cards.
Just a reminder that the people online can't hear you, so just give me a moment to restate your question. Thank you. So the question was, how does Lois know about the surplus lands? Is that correct?
No, she said how to get on the list.
How do we get on the list? Okay.
And so
Lois has some cards, so she can distribute those. Okay. Are we ready for a new question? I've got a question for Lowell. This is about CRA funds. And so the question is, are CRA funds in Florida restricted to specific geographic areas geographic area where the taxes are collected?
Yes, yes. And so there are dozens, I don't know the number of CRAs, but they're spread throughout the state. And yes, typically the city or county has to devote on a geographic area where that tax increment financing or TIF will be collected. And so like I'm in St. Petersburg, and the South St. Pete CRA I think is the second biggest in the state. And right, so if you're a homeowner and you're trying to access the affordable housing funds, you have to be in that CRA to access those funds. And it is, once they codify the geographic boundary, it typically, it can't move unless they vote to adjust it.
Thank you, Lowell. Thank you for that information. So this is a good question. And so, Lois, we're going to ask you, because you're here on the ground in Lee County. This is in regards to the $1.1 billion for CDBG DR. So that's disaster relief funds that were received because of Hurricane Ian. This question is asking, has the distribution of the funds been effective in repairs of homes to help seniors and others from losing their homes in the ways that you have described?
Lee County established Lee Cares to be able to rebuild the houses that were destroyed and to have repairs done to houses. But for the majority of it, it went through the program through Lee Cares. So a lot of the people that got repairs through local long-term recovery groups, not through Lee County, actually.
It's my understanding right now, also, we were discussing this matter in our affordable housing meeting the other day. I think that the Lee Cares funds, they've suspended applications on that because they have reached the cap for the funding that they had put forward. So yeah, there's a lot of unmet need out there still. This is a great question, and with Lois, you're here on the ground actually trying to get permits and build things. Lowell, with your policy experience, we want to talk about height restrictions. So you had mentioned trying to increase density. So are there height restrictions in Lee County regarding affordable housing or housing overall? And so discussing multifamily units. Lowell, could you take a moment to address that first?
Oh, sure. So I have to look at the code for Lee County. I'm not, aware of the actual height restrictions, but there are, in every city and county, in their code, they'll have height restrictions for certain zones. And so like there's some in larger cities where the height restrictions very liberal, and very expansive. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the height restriction is in Lee County. Lois might know that.
Lois actually deals more with not really tall homes, but multifamily homes. So she builds quadplexes. But I do think that this is an excellent opportunity to talk about some of the barriers that you have had to constructing homes. So, Lois, you and I have had conversations in the past about, you discussed manufactured housing, that there are barriers to building that. It's a very affordable way to have more housing. We've talked about having smaller footprint homes. I know that you've had barriers to that. You've had barriers to the construction of the homes that you're building now. So could you discuss some of the barriers to the construction of housing that would be affordable for people that we're targeting, which is people that are under 80% of the area median income?
With the amount of single people and the amount of seniors becoming homeless, smaller footprint homes and smaller homes is what basically at the meetings that we've been to that was requested, because they don't need a 3-2 with a 1-car garage. Excuse me. I explained to Lee County, City of Fort Myers, that people don't need these huge houses anymore. And the pushback with that is they designed a certain kind of house for the City of Fort Myers. Now, it's not the same way with Lee County, but City of Fort Myers thinks affordable house should, excuse me, should be a 3-2 with a 1-car garage. With the change of weather, I have a really bad cough. So I fought that for a while, and I even put in a variance request and they wouldn't accept it. So everybody needs the type of housing that fits them, and we have to get past the zoning requirements and the variance request.
Lowell, I'm going to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
So not just talking about height, but can you discuss some of the other ways that density could be increased from your experience?
Yeah. Well, I was going to piggyback off what Lois is talking about. So she on the ground knows this better than I do, but parking can be very expensive for housing development and be prohibitive for affordable housing developers. Depending on where you are, the cost ranges from like 15,000 to 50,000, per parking spot. And so I think to Lois's point, one adjustment to code, possibly in Fort Myers, but elsewhere in Florida, would be to reduce those parking minimums. Parking reform is really critical to add more density, because that frees up, funding for the developers to focus on adding more to the home or adding more space. So I'm not the expert there. Lois is the developer, but I just wanted to, say that we also see that issue around the state.
Well, I'm going to actually segue, Lowell, really quickly. There is, or you hopefully can give us a status update. I know that last year, on the very last day of session, there was an accessory dwelling unit bill that
Yes.
It didn't end up going through. Can you give us a status update on how that's moving through the Florida chambers right now?
Sure. Yes, and that was unfortunate. We all thought that was going to pass last year, but so it is still alive. I think I got a question in the group chat as well. It is with the Senate right now, and the issue is that they have added back in. So the House did not. They passed it, but did not care about the short-term rental provision. So there was a restriction on, that the ADU cannot be used for more than a month, I think, with short-term rentals. The House doesn't care about that. The Senate does. And so that is the real distinction now. They're going to have to come together and have through conference committee, I guess. And so it's still alive, but there are amendments being filed now to address that. And that's the latest one on the short-term rental. So it's still alive. But there's, another week of possibility of it getting passed. So.
Okay, so there's some sticking points on the VRBOs or the Airbnb. People are sensitive to that. Is there any way for the government to make sure that accessory dwelling units are affordable for people who need affordable rentals?
Well, so if a local government passes, an LDR, land development regulation, that allows ADUs permitted in single family districts. So like St. Pete's done that, Gainesville has done that, other communities have. They could add another affordability component to it and say, they condition funding on some of the units being affordable. So St. Petersburg does that, where they have funding to help you build an ADU. But if you do that, you have to commit to, I think it's 10 years to make sure that ADU is rented to, an affordable, low income or affordable unit. So that's one way.
So that's great to know, but it sounds like policymakers need to actually have the desire to create those rules to make things affordable.
Yeah, I don't think the state would. If the questions are on the state, I don't think the state would mandate affordability, for the ADUs, because that would, we'd love that. But they're really focused on like land use and zoning reform, just to allow more housing, and sort of let the private market sort of be more of a solution. And then if local governments want to place affordability restrictions on the ADUs that they allow, then they can do that.
That's great. Lois, do you have any comments about that?
Do you guys understand what ADUs are? Okay. ADUs are an accessory dwelling unit that's added to a person's property, like a mother-in-law's quarters. You see a lot of them on McGregor because that's the way it used to be. So when ADUs are built, there's no stove in them because the main house has to have a stove. Under Lee County rules, and I think it's everywhere, Lowell, I could be mistaken, you can't have an actual stove in there.
It is different with different municipalities. So this
Okay.
is like a
So Lee
requirement.
County, yeah, Lee County requires no stoves. So an accessory dwelling unit is a plus in case you have like your mother, your father, or your children living on your property, and if you want to use it as a rental. So that's what an ADU is.
Accessory dwelling unit. So they could also be called granny flats, in-law suites, in-law quarters. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
There are other places in the state and also throughout the country that have allowed accessory dwelling units more or by right, and it is a good option. I know that AARP is a huge proponent of them because they see that as a possible solution for helping people to age in their homes. So have a caretaker come and live in a smaller unit that's on property. It could also be a way to generate rent income if you build an ADU. They're not cheap though. I mean, it's still expensive to build. It's smaller than your larger home, but everything is still really expensive. You own your land, so that's one of the expenses that's gone, but still the lumber and brick and mortar and all of that is still expensive. So
Are those ADUs are in the other areas that they've allowed in other areas and they seem to be working, are they restricted to having no stoves in them as well? Or have they allowed them to have the stoves just to be able to allow to address the affordable housing in those particular areas?
I have no idea on that. Lowell, do you have an idea on that?
Yeah, I actually I was not aware, that there were no stoves. I guess this all goes back to each municipality and county having their own, land development code, and they can put design standards for ADUs that vary from county to county or city to city. So I knew that there were in some cases like ADUs that didn't have stoves or other amenities. But I forget the original question, but there's no state standard, for that. I think it's just all up to each city and county and how they put it in their code and what's allowed.
thank you. We had a question just so that just to clarify something really quickly. Lois mentioned earlier quad units. Can you just describe? I actually have some pictures of them. They're really cool. So if you want to see them later on, come and see me. So Lois, tell them about the units that you're building.
Okay, so we are building what are called SROs, which are quads.
What does SRO stand for?
Single room occupancy dwelling. So if you look at the house on the outside, it looks like a regular house. You can't tell the difference. Inside are 4 separate dwelling units, 4 tiny houses. So there's a full-size refrigerator, a microwave, a kitchenette, your bedroom, roll-in shower bathrooms with grab bars, so that you can age in place if you're not elderly. So some of the disabled people and elderly people love them because the roll-in shower bathrooms, if you have a wheelchair or a walker, you can get into. So there's 4 of these in one house. There is a shared kitchen area, but you can have a hot plate in your room, you can have a crock pot in your room, and we bring them Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. We try to get all the people in the house to talk to each other and know each other. So when we first bring them all together before we house them, we buy them lunch, we sit them down and have them have a conversation with each other to find out who they are as people, what their likes and dislikes are, and see whether or not they, can live together. So they're just 600 square feet. Hey, when I get older, 600 square feet's it. My house is 2,500. Just dusting alone is a pain. So
I'm sorry. What was the question? They don't know each other. No. Do they know each other, Lois?
when we bring them together for lunch, they know each other.
They really are incredible. I'd love to show you some pictures. Okay, let's get down to like we've got just a little bit of time left. I want to get down to like the down and dirty questions, like the real policy ones, because we're here to talk about solutions as well, right? So Lowell mentioned an affordable housing deficit of close to 12,000 units. The card here is asking, is it even possible for us to build our way out of this deficit? So let's start with Lowell, and then I'd like to hear what Lois has to say as well.
That's the big question. I mean, inventory, everyone knows like we need massive amounts of inventory. And I think it's possible to, I think there needs to be just as much focus on preservation of existing affordability. And when I say that, I mean, so subsidized units where the affordability restrictions are expiring. So rentals that have 15-year LURAs, which means that the property owner only has to rent it affordably for 15 years and then it can be sold to market. I think that if you can tackle the preservation and extension of those affordability periods, along with kind of the second strategy that I talked about was land use and zoning reform. If we can do more of that at the local level and make it easier to build, like Lois is saying, some of these smaller building typologies in volume, I think we can. I don't know, build our way out of the problem is tough because there's a supply side and a demand side. So there has to be, you know, as aggressive subsidies as there are supply. But so I think that if you can do those two things, if we can really put more focus, than there has been on preservation and, supplying new construction, you can get there, but it's a big problem for sure.
Thank you, Lowell. Lois?
Okay, so I don't know if all of you have seen, there's probably not 1 square inch of land in Lee County left for housing. They built all these big apartment complexes. Why they're not affordable is because the developers want the most for their buck. Unfortunately, most of them are sitting empty. So eventually, if we do have a crash, which we probably are going to, those prices have no other way but to come down. Right now, all the people that are becoming homeless could be housed in those units, but they're too expensive. $1,400 to start for a single person who makes $14 an hour. Lowell went through all that. They can't afford it. We get calls every day from single parents. So I think there's the ability for these people to be housed. It's just a matter of the cost being too much from the developer. So we saw during the pandemic what happened. We had hedge funds come in and buy up all the affordable properties. The rents as a counselor went from $650 to $950 to $1,000 to $1,400 in 3 months. Kicking people out that were living in those units paying $650 and $950. By the end of the year, we're paying $1,200. And these people are waiters, waitresses, gas station attendants, everybody that handles your food. Most of these people are now homeless living in their cars. So yes, it could come down, but
So I'm so glad that you brought that up. So we just have 2 more minutes. We have so many good questions here. We could go on for hours, of course, with this great conversation. I'm glad you brought that up. There is a surplus of units for folks, market rate units, and so people that are making above 80%, so 120 AMI. There's plenty of units available for them. So it would be nice if there were some sort of subsidies to help people pay. So talking about sort of like Section 8 housing vouchers, those kind of things. That would be really great. But I want to ask just one final question, and you guys are going to have to do this as fast as you can. But because after all of the things that we've talked about, I would like for you just to give us a final word before we give it back to Sandy to sum up. We have heard about all these problems. How can we help in this room to make this crisis better? Lowell, and then we'll give Lois the final word.
Well, this meeting is a great start, and I would say, first of all, contact, your legislators, obviously. Be aware of the changes that we're talking about right now with policy. And, through coalition, start demanding certain changes. In my opinion, it's land use and zoning is what's going to get us out of this. And also it's because that's what the state legislature is most receptive to right now. It's not funding. It's not really like more subsidies. It's land use and zoning reform. So I think some of the things we just talked about, like ADUs, duplexes, quadplexes, etc., really finding a way within Lee County to get your legislators to understand. For example, the starter home bill is not passing this year, but it would have been, it would have been a game changer, and hopefully next year it will pass, and that will be, one great step forward with added density.
That's great. Thank you, Lowell. Lois, what can we do?
You guys can advocate for lower homeowners insurance rates. You can work with the local counties to try to see if there's some ways they can implement rental assistance. But how you guys can get involved, help to volunteer, help to push the issue to local legislatures about, like what Lowell said, advocate for the little guys, because nobody is doing that right now. And if they are, they're not doing a good job. For example, just really quickly, all of the housing choice vouchers and mainstream vouchers were cut by our current administration. So people that have them could possibly lose their housing. So.
All right, so a lot of advocacy there. Before I turn it back over for our conclusion, let's once again give a huge round of applause to our experts today. Thank you, Lowell and Lois, for joining us.
Thank you for having me virtually. I hope to be there in person someday.
So do we, Lowell.
Thank you.
So real quick, I just want to introduce our housing chair, Lena Cowell. And she's the lead of all of this. And you want to say a couple of things? Yeah.
I want to thank both Lois and Lowell for these fantastic presentations, and it just means that we've got a lot of work to do. And I just wanted to say that the League of Women Voters Housing Committee is welcoming any new members to the league, number one, and then we would love to have you join our committee, because we are the ones who are going to try to help listen to what you have all said about what we should be advocating for, and that's what we will be doing is, as a League of Women Voters Housing Committee, is looking to the county government and the local government, and we even have representatives here today from local government. And we would like to introduce Mr. Bichette, who's in the back there. Thank you for coming, and we will be talking to you some more about how Fort Myers can help us produce more affordable housing, and who can support more affordable housing. But thank you so much, and anybody who is interested in joining our committee, please see me afterwards, and we will be happy to have you join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, happy birthday. We may sing happy birthday later, just so you know. I'd like to introduce our genius behind our membership, but making sure that this all flows very well. Eddie Stahl is the chair of the membership committee, and I'm just hanging out with him, just trying to make sure that we get as many people involved. As you know, based on everything that we've heard, one or two people cannot make this difference. It takes every single person in this room plus more. And I would like to challenge you guys to sign up with the League of Women Voters. We are there. That's one of the reasons why I signed up for it, because of the fact that they work hard. We work hard. And that's what motivated me to join. But get in touch with Eddie Stahl. And we really want you guys here. We want to make sure that not only do we have people on the board on these particular committees, we address environmental injustices, social injustices, housing injustices, every injustice that there is, we are out there and we are fighting. but we need your support. Your support meaning that you sign up, and I'm expecting every one of y'all to sign up if you haven't signed up thus far, to sign up and join us. I will introduce Eddie Stahl.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Before I talk about membership, just really quickly, I want to say I apologize for any technical issues that we had today. It's really challenging when you're a PowerPoint presentation and your computer and Zoom don't want to communicate. They're not being friendly with each other today, so apologize for that. But to talk about membership, if you're already a member of the league, thank you. Thank you so much for your financial support, which is almost number one. But the other is thank you for participating in the committees that we have, tabling events that we have. The members can't do it all. So if you're not a member, thank you for your future assistance that you may provide to us, as well as joining a committee or maybe even being a member of the board. So we really need all of that. It isn't a small group that can do it all. And right now it is kind of a small group, but Jacqueline said it so eloquently. We have all these things that we do with the League of Women Voters. And personally, I've been a part of many organizations in the past. I've not been so passionate about an organization as I have of the League of Women Voters of Lee County. We do so much in the community for the underserved, for water safety and conservation, for wildlife, anything that you can imagine, we do. And we can find a place for you. If you have a passion, we have it for you. So all you have to do is join. When you walk out today, I'm going to be guarding the door. Actually, I'm not, but you can get out safely. But if you want to join, please see one of us on the board and we can help you join, navigate the website, and give us your check or go online and do it. So please, please, please. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sandy Frank, our wonderful president.
Thank you. Thank you all today. I want to thank the speakers. I think you were both fabulous. You gave us a lot to think about, a lot to do. I want to thank the committee. You heard from Lana, and you've met most of the members of the Affordable Housing Committee today. And you've seen some of our other leaders, Eddie, membership and secretary and technical person. There are a few people who, we are a volunteer organization. We have a lot of people working on a lot of different things. And there are a few people who you haven't heard about who happen to be here today. Marcia Ellis she's second vice president. She works on environmental issues and whatever we need to have done. Anna Colwood, you probably met at the registration table. And thank you, Anna. She's our treasurer. Education, Betsy Vaughn is on Zoom today, and we support early childhood education and a number of public education issues. Health is a very important issue today for us, for this county and for the state and the United States. We have two leaders on that, Lorna Washington, who's in the back, and Dana Clark. And Dana also helped to coordinate the logistics today. Voter rights restoration, we work on that, and Willie Middleton is our leader on that. Jerry Ware is not able to be here today. She coordinates voter registration and community engagement. Observer Corps, we have Sue Osen So what Sue just said is that she watches the city council meeting. She also coordinates our volunteers who watch government agencies and then report to us so we can get a heads up on what's happening and know when we can step in and do some advocacy or some thank yous, depending on what the situation is. So I just wanted to introduce those people to you today. Thank you all for coming. Please, if you're not already registered to vote, make sure that you are registered. Renew your vote by mail and check your registration. There have been some issues this year with signatures and addresses, and if you change your driver's license, you may need to make sure that your registration is up to date on that. There's some kind of computer glitch that is disenfranchising people, so you can easily fix it if you call the supervisor of elections. So I urge you to check on that and do that. So stay informed and be engaged. You can get information from us, if you're not already receiving information, you can sign up for that. I encourage you to sign up with the State of Florida League of Women Voters as well as League of Women Voters US. Those are 3 different email distribution systems, but you will receive a lot of information about what's happening with legislation and issues that the league is concerned about. So again, thank you for coming today, and we hope to see you in the future. And as Eddie said, sign up, become a member. Thank you. Lorna. Oh, thank you. You missed it earlier, but I will repeat it. Okay, so our next meeting will be back in this room. It will be April 4th, and I'm going to let Marcia explain what.
So I'm hoping to see everyone back here next month, April 4th on a Saturday morning. Our topic is overdevelopment in Southwest Florida, sacrificing wildlife and erasing agriculture. We have 3 speakers. We have Amber Crooks she's senior environmental policy person at the Conservancy down in Naples. We have Katrina Shaddix. She's with Bear Warriors United. Her organization has led some lawsuits, including the successful lawsuit on behalf of the manatees with the deprivation of the seagrass, their food source, with nutrient pollution. She's going to be joining us, as well as John Hallman of Defending Rural Florida. He's out of Madison, a 20-year lobbyist for ag, working to preserve our rural communities. So we're very much looking forward to hearing more about how wildlife and agriculture is being impacted by development in Lee County. I hope you guys can all make it.
Thank you, Marcia. And then on May 2nd, we will be talking about voting issues and get updates on what the new laws may or may not be and what we can all do to make sure that people are registered to vote, engaged, and informed. So thank you all for coming.